there was time when there was content like Astitva and Shakti coming on Doordarshan and ZTV and everything, and it was great content. It was way ahead of its time. Now the makers are showing a person turning into a fly and moving around, someone turning into a Nagin and moving. What are you teaching your kids?
Welcome back to another episode of the RCTPOD. This week, Harman and I get into a discussion with Tarushi Choudhary, who is the digital media and communications head of a Bollywood website called peepingmoon.com. We talk about why censorship on OTT platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime are a concern for the Indian audiences and how it could affect the digital content. We also talk about Tarushi's podcast, where she talks to women from around the world about their inspiring stories. And that's not all. We also have a fun news segment for you called Almost News, followed by a super amazing recommendations for you. So, don't go anywhere. My name is Smarth, and you're listening to Raining Chats and Talks. Before we go ahead, we would like to thank all our listeners who reached out to us with their feedback and support. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can connect with us on Instagram at RCTPOD or on our email ID, which is rainingchatsandtalks@gmail.com. We will leave the links to the same in the episode description, so do check it out. And with that, let's get back to the episode. So first of all, Tarushi, thank you so much for joining us for this episode.
Thank you for having me.
We are super excited to have you
Me
because
too.
because the topic that we're discussing today, I think you can give us a really good perspective on that. And what we're discussing today is about censorship on OTT platforms. And before we start with the discussion, for all the listeners who don't understand OTT platforms, what it essentially means is over-the-top media platforms like Netflix, Hotstar, Voot, Prime, etc. So recently there has been like a lot of debate which is going on in India about the censorship and the content regulation that should be done by the government. So there is this survey that I was going through done by local circles, and there are as many as 63% of respondents who feel that some kind of censorship or at least like a code of conduct approved by the government should be there on these platforms. So Tarushi, what is your first initial thoughts on this? Like, should there be censorship on these platforms?
I think, instead of the government putting a censorship on OTT platforms, it will be much better if the platforms themselves understand what they should and what they shouldn't put out. Of course, there is a sort of censorship that is already there. The platforms already know कि कौन सी country में किस type का content release करना है. At what level they don't have to do it. But by government, I don't think so there should be any censorship, which the government has already said that they cannot put any kind of restrictions to the content on OTT platforms.
I agree with Tarushi, because I remember this episode from Patriot Act got eliminated on Saudi Arabia because of the government's pressure. But that is like extremes. I think over the time Netflix has launched, it's only 10 episodes or movies that have been removed that do from extreme pressure. But what about the usual violence, nudity, and strong language that we get to experience?
Right. I mean, see, the kind of content that gets uploaded on these platforms, first of all, it's coming from the local communities, right? If they're showing something in India, which has, let's say, very strong topics like honor killing or dowry or child marriage, it is coming from the local community. So people are actually aware about it, and it's already going on the platform. Now people get a little bit disturbed by seeing it online, which I don't understand, because they're the part of the problem and they're seeing the problem on on a internet, on an OTT platform. Then they say, oh,
Exactly.
it's a problem. They don't realize it otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, see, there is some sort of a content liberty that all the content creators take while they're creating some content. And I think मतलब digital media पे content डालने का एक reason यही होता है that they get a lot of freedom of the content they're putting.
Right.
But don't you think that somehow this freedom is misused? And मतलब there are a lot of platforms like Alt Balaji and MX Player if you go and check them, I think 80% of their content is very explicit and
Right.
probably not suitable for certain ages. So probably somewhere these content platforms are taking too much liberty of their content as well.
See, I think there's always a misuse of power that you have. It's not just an OTT platform; it's everywhere. When the decision came, when the government said that they do not have any power to regulate the internet content, but they suggested that the OTT platform should come up with their own regulatory body to have these kind of censorship on the OTT platforms. And then the streaming platforms like Netflix, Z5, All Balaji, there's MX Player, they all opposed this entire situation. But another
Right.
platforms like Hotstar and Woot and Sony Live, they all decided to come up with a council that's called Digital Content, I guess, DCCC
Yeah,
something.
Digital Content Complaint Council,
Right.
DCCC.
So
Yeah.
they decided to come up with it, but not all the platforms were on board with them, right? And
Right.
when you're talking about platforms like MX Player and All Balaji, I know the kind of content you are talking about, and they think that it's their right to put out that content, and as a user ki inke paas kya content hai. So it should be on the users and also what they want to consume, what they don't want to consume. It's not always about the person who's manufacturing these kind of product to go online. वही user consumption का relationship हो जाता है ना. It's that
Exactly.
also.
But also, Tarushi, when we talk about these platforms themselves self-regulating themselves, we also have to understand that practically these are based on, like, they have their own business strategies. They have to make
Hmm.
profits, and they know what the selling points are. So having this, so the reason why you have a different body that controls all of this is there's no bias. But
Right.
Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, अगर ये आपस में if they regulate, I'm sure they're not going to obviously think about, stuff that is concerning, but they're only going to think about their own businesses. That is why something like this is not going to be practically possible.
It's true. I mean, what you are saying, Harman, is kind of it's actually right because सबको पैसा बनाना है and everyone wants to be ahead in the game.
Yeah.
Right. When Netflix came to India, Netflix was the only OTT platform which everyone consumed. It
Yeah.
was so popular, and after that, other platforms have emerged, like Prime and Hotstar and Z. All these have come way later. So, in order to give competition to Netflix, they kind of put out everything they had. I mean, they didn't think about what kind of content they are putting, whether it's explicit or not, it has violence, nudity or not. They were like, just put out every goddamn thing so that we can give competition to Netflix. And now every platform is doing kind of the same thing. They just want to run ahead in game, and no one wants to take care of what they are showing out to the users. So it's all business. It's all about money.
And I don't think that's a very good strategy also. Like, we as Indians in a society, we're not very comfortable watching a lot of content with our family, and especially which is on Netflix and Prime. Like, it
Right.
happens with me. I mean, right now at my home, we're not using any sort of a cable service, any Tata Sky or Dish TV or anything. So my parents, I, and everybody else, we're all consuming content on these platforms, but we do it separately because somehow there is some boundary. कुछ मतलब होता है ना, एक वो शर्म है कि वो साथ में बैठ के नहीं देखा जाता. Like,
Hmm.
they'll watch in their room, I'll watch in my room. So somewhere, do you think like this need also comes, like, we sometimes we also start wishing कि यार थोड़ा बहुत censorship होना चाहिए so that we can sit with our family and watch.
You
Do you
know,
also feel uncomfortable?
I got the point what you're saying. So for me now, there are two type of contents which is there on OTT platforms. One is it that is completely not suitable for people to see. For kids, for people of any age or anything, such as violence, too much of violence, too much of bloodshed. I don't think so. It's necessary to show on OTT platforms. Someone's just slitting someone's throat, someone's just chopping off someone's hand and everything. That's gruesome. I don't think so. They should show it. And even if it has to be there, they can maybe present it in some other way. Uspe censorship, okay, maybe they can do it. Another content is which is reality, which is out there, and the shows on OTT and movies on OTT are trying to reach out to more people and show the reality. And now, as users, we are hypocrites sitting and saying that, oh, this should not be shown. Why? Because you know that is the reality, and others will get to know. So there are, for me, there are two type of content that is going on. If I am sitting with my family, and let's say someone in my family is pro something bad that is happening in the society, let's say dowry, they are showing it, and then they are showing marital rape after that, and someone in my family doesn't understand what that is, and they are like, that is okay for them, so they'll be like, oh, this should not be shown, yeah, this is not a right content. For me, it is there. Why? Because I think a lot of people would get aware about the fact that, oh, there is something called marital rape. Shit, I never realized it.
So this is where users, like viewers, discretion comes into play. Like you should know what is good for you and not. And for
Exactly.
like kids who do not know the difference between right and wrong, they have their own profiles, and they can obviously not be allowed to be on the
Right.
adult
Right.
profiles.
Also, Harman, if you see, matlab TV में ना, there is still, we understand, like there is some sort of censorship because वहाँ पे, even if there's like a finite number of channels to choose from, but still a lot of content is pushed without your consent there. So probably censorship makes sense. But if you see platforms like these on digital platforms, you go and you willingly select a title to see.
Yeah, I
So
think
I
the
don't think
only
censorship makes
the
sense.
the reason why these platforms became popular was because people wanted to change. People had stopped watching the normal serials and that were coming on television, and they wanted a big change, and that is why they're selling. And that is why Amazon Prime, Netflix, these all platforms know that this is their selling point. They have to show the reality, otherwise it's just going to become like regular television. So like that is what, to a petition filed by an NGO called JRF, which is Justice for Rights Foundation, to regulate this online content. Apar Gupta, who's executive director at Internet Freedom Foundation, said there is a risk of internet content becoming more like television. So that is the thing. I mean, our parents, as you said, Samarth, that they sometimes are opposed to all this content. But at the same time, even they are so fond of these serials that are portraying the same thing. My dad is a big fan of stuff like Sacred Games, and so you have to like have a balance around. I mean,
And
it's
also,
basic
Harman,
hypocrisy.
yeah, I mean, what you're saying, no, in that case, see, television, I'll be very out frank, it's shit right now.
Yeah.
It is absolute full of shit. And I mean, the kind of content people are creating for Indian television, it's gone down the drain. I mean, there was time when there was content like Astitva and Shakti coming on Doordarshan and ZTV and everything, and it was great content. It
Yeah.
was way ahead of its time. Now the makers are showing a person turning into a fly and moving around,
Yeah.
someone
And
someone turning into a
Exactly.
Nagin and moving. What are you teaching your
so
kids?
that is the thing. It'll take us like 10 steps back. If something like these things are censored, we're going to stop. Like that is, I remember when I was a kid, I used to look at like stuff on HBO and wonder, when is this kind of stuff going to get created in India? And now the time is there. And
Right.
if we don't accept it now, then it's going to become, as it
And
was 10 years back.
as far as OTT is concerned, it's more of like what the user wants to see. People who are having objection about the fact that there's nudity, there's violence, they are consuming the same content they are raising their fingers on. So they want to see it, then they want to raise objection on it. Why? In the name of their kids, so that our kids don't see it. There are a lot of other ways to ask kids not to do it, and it's all on the consumption of the things, no? If your kid is seeing, you also watching it, and you telling the government that, oh, this is shit content, kid will also want to watch it.
Yeah. So that is the
So
reason. Today in the morning, I asked my mom about the same. I said, I'm going to speak on this topic. So, what is your take? Because I really wanted to know, since she consumes the same kind of content, plus she's a mother. So, her view was very important for me. And she said, oh, it definitely should be censored. I mean, they're showing so much, and this is not great. But when I actually told her that, Mama, in the process of actually censoring it, all of this is going to be censored. So, whatever you're watching today, all of this is going to go. And then she was, then she started wondering. I said, like, can you like afford to watch only those kind of serials? and not watch this content at all. And she's not okay with it. So, there's this dilemma even in them as parents. They know that this is not going to work.
So there's a very interesting statistic that I have that we're speaking about, about this why like people want to watch the content on these platforms, but still they want censorship. So according to this survey only by local circles, 53% of the respondents said that they are using these services only because they allow them the convenience to watch, and only 9% of them you are using these services for the quality of content. So if you see, people don't really, they're not really concerned with the content. It's just that कि उनको convenience है that they can watch anything at any time. And somehow, if you see financially also, and मतलब the digital content like is now cheaper than your cable and Tata Sky and all. So do you think that is also one of the factors, because they are not there for the content, they're there for the convenience? That is the reason they don't mind censorship.
Absolutely. I think, see, now with the movies getting released on OTT platforms, it's itself a very big change that has come. No one ever realized that big budget Bollywood films will ever release on OTT. There is Gulabo Sitabo, which released, Shakuntala Devi is going to release. There is Janvi Kapoor's movie, which is going to release on Netflix now. There are 8 other movies Hotstar is picking up and releasing
But
now.
isn't that because of the lockdown situation?
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Ki, like Gulabo Sitabo released, okay, it was on the user ease that they watched a brand new movie at the convenience, whenever they wanted, wherever they wanted. They sat down, they switched on their televisions or mobile phones or laptops. They watched half an hour, they went to sleep, got up again, watched the entire movie. It's actually based on convenience.
Do you think like the content and the viewership will get affected, that if we are moving towards an age where we will be censoring all the content and everything will be regulated by the government?
It will. I mean, government ka bus chale to they're gonna put a lot of censorship on OTT. They're just gonna tell no, nothing against this particular religion, everything against that particular religion. You know, there it's gonna be a shithole if it happens, if government starts putting regulations on OTT platforms. So it should not happen, because there's no one is on the non-biased side. Everyone has their own agenda in putting censorships. We don't have anyone who's sitting with a free mind and saying, okay, इस content पे ये censorship लगाओ because this is the problem. No, everyone's like, okay, मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि ये करना चाहिए तो ये करो. That is the problem.
Okay, so my mind is bombarded with so many thoughts right now. I have to clear two things, like two very important things here. First, when we said viewership, obviously it could decrease, but we're not looking at the angle of illegal downloads and piracy. So if you're not getting something on Netflix legally, but you still want to watch it, you would obviously increase the black market. And
Right.
then the second thing being, in India, where I don't want to believe this, but we're definitely more intolerant than other countries. So there's a very interesting angle in India where people think that content is anti-national, which increases the
Absolutely.
range of content that should not be seen. So ऐसे तो यार, you could be pointing stuff at anything,
That's
as
what.
it happens in
Yeah.
the movies. So I'm really
I
this.
mean, that's what, right? Exactly the point that, that we don't have anyone with a non-biased mind. Everyone wants to do what they think is right or they think is wrong. उस
Yeah.
according censorship लगेगी फिर.
और
It,
especially जब censorship लग जाता है, you know how I don't want to say this, but you know how sex is a taboo in our country. But that does
hmm.
not reduce the number of rapes that happen, right? Sex exists, and not talking about sex leads to more number of rapes.
And come on, this concept of showing sex on OTT or television or movies and everything, and someone saying that, oh, because you show sex, there is rape happening. I'm like, come on, dude. That is not the reason why rape is happening. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been situations where they have said because of the type of clothing and how you're dressing, the rapes are happening because of that also. So I don't think this comment does not come as a surprise to me at all.
Right. So it's just a blame game. It's like when kids are watching something and they do some mistake, someone's like, "Oh, your kid used to watch so many shows now which had violence. So see, he's gone out and now he's fighting with people." That is not how it works.
Chalo, if that is the case, then you have to protect your children. Then you don't even let them watch news, because that's the most gruesome and that's the reality.
Yeah.
news is full of tragedy all around the world. So
Okay,
if you
now when
want
we're
a
talking about censorship, put a goddamn censorship on news.
yeah.
Put it over there, the kind of thing they should and should not show on news. That is what needs censorship.
See, I think news is a topic that can have like a separate episode of its own because it is
Absolutely.
so big.
That's true. And have you guys realized that over the years, since the time OTT has come to India, there has been a shift in the kind of content that has been put up and the kind of content you see. Have you guys realized it over the period of time?
Oh, definitely. And in everything, the kind of actors that are being casted to the type of content that is being created and being viewed by people. And it's so close to reality. It's not fiction, it's not fantasies and story tales. It's
Right.
actually very close to reality and things that happen in our neighborhood. And that is why it's so important to be seen.
See, I think there was like a gap. Like before, also they were like we had like a full movies and like a Bollywood industry जहाँ पे बहुत सारा commercial cinema चल रहा था. There was like a parallel cinema also जो release होता था. It stayed for like a week or two in the
Yeah.
theaters, but it never like reached the masses.
Hmm.
And then there was like the whole TV industry जहाँ पे वो daily soaps और नागिन और मच्छर लोग बन रहे हैं. So definitely a lot of people are not interested in that type of content. But मतलब digital platforms has given a stage for a lot of good content creators
True.
जैसे जो लोग YouTube पे बहुत सारा content release कर रहे थे but YouTube is a very big space and वहाँ पे content release करना does not really make sense for everybody
Also,
because
over there, you have to promote it yourself. Here, OTT platforms
exactly
are buying your content and promoting it.
exactly so when you have a tag like you're on Netflix or you're on Prime it automatically starts to market itself तो
That's
उससे
true.
आई थिंक बहुत एक चेंज आया है लाइक वी हैव सीन सच गुड कंटेंट लाइक सेक्रेड गेम्स अ लॉट ऑफ अदर यू नो स्टैंड अलोन इंडिपेंडेंट फिल्म्स ऑन
I
नेटफ्लिक्स
mean, see the kind of series that's coming up. I recently saw Arya. I before that I saw Patal Lok. There was Panchayat. I mean, see the beautiful content. There is this another Sony Live series that is released that's called Your Honor. It has Jimmy Shegal in it. It's exploring potentials of actors who were neglected for such a long time.
So, will it be okay to say that the power that these platforms has got and the power of reach is actually also a concern because it has the power to change the world, change people's perceptions on a lot of social issues that were not being addressed before. And now, obviously, with the kind of content that's being made, a lot of social issues are being challenged and the thoughts are being changed. So that is why if
Definitely.
it has the, if it has a good side to it, it'll obviously have the bad side to where the negative things can also get promoted and go into the minds of children. But I think that is where the kids profile I think comes into place. If the parents can be cautious enough to not watch these kind of content in front of their kids and normalize it and make kids profiles and not allow them to have it on there.
Absolutely.
The onus
That is
wouldn't be
right.
on the OTT platforms or the parents anymore. Then otherwise, children are going to do what they do. They literally have exposure from everywhere. I don't think OTT platforms is the only thing that is going to be a concern.
True. And also see in our society now, especially in Indian society, parents do not talk to their kids about what is wrong and what is right.
That's a
And
very
what I mean is in the sense of what kind of content is good for you to watch, what kind of content is not good for you to watch. They'll say, उसके साथ जाके मत खेलना वो अच्छा लड़का नहीं है. This is the kind of conversation parents have, right? You cannot hang out with those people, they are bad. You hang out with these people, they are good. You wear this is right. Don't wear that is wrong. This is the conversation we have. Instead, there is
true
more to it. They are supposed to tell their kids, this is wrong. If you see someone um, plotting against someone else and trying to bully them, that is wrong. If you see it on television, that is wrong. You should never follow it. They'll never talk to their kids about it. They'll never say when a scene is there in the normal movie also, if someone is just छेड़ रहा है कोई किसी लड़की को, they'll never say कि बेटा this is wrong, huh? Don't ever do it in real life. So it's parents are not even getting involved in what the kid wants, what they are watching, what they are not watching. So forget about OTT consumption. वो normal life में ही नहीं बात करते हैं.
But it's so surprising also because I remember, and this happened with one of my friends also. My parents are okay with me watching that content, but just not with them. So there are times when we watch the same series, but like at different times and at different places, and they know that they're okay with that. But there's still some sort of inhibition, and they say like these things should not be that
But
long, right?
that's
There should
not
be a
just
line.
with the OTT platforms, no? You remember in maybe when you were kids and there used to be some ad coming on television, or maybe some kissing scene or some intimate scene. Parents used to just change the channel itself.
But उसका
That
बार तो
हाँ, it
बहुत
was, there
rise हो
was an
गया है.
awkward silence.
that
Awkward
has
silence होता था उस time पे.
I mean, I am blessed, touch wood, I'm blessed that my parents never changed the channel. Okay. They were like, watch this, you
हाँ.
should know all these damn things that's happening. So they never changed the channel. But I used to see it in others' house, like my relatives' house used to go there and used to change the channel.
Yeah.
So it's
I
been
think it's a way
happening
to
for a very long
normalize
time.
things.
Yeah,
It's a way
yeah.
to normalize things,
It's
and
been
that should
happening
be there.
everywhere.
Thank God at least you got to see the full ads. मुझे तो सिर्फ आधी आधी याद है. मतलब वो chocolate निकालने के बाद क्या हुआ I don't remember only.
I mean, imagine our generation got to know what condoms are and what these pills are way later in life. They didn't know it. Why? Because the channels were changed. Now, at least the kids know what are contraceptive methods and measures to take.
अच्छा, by the way, अगर if the censorship and all is done, तो what will these platforms do? Like alt Balaji MX, like 80% of content तो इनका खत्म ही हो जाएगा फिर लोग देखेंगे क्या उस पे?
Then they'll make more Nagin and Makhis.
But anyway, on that note, there is another very clean, good content that Tarushi you are producing, which is your recently started podcast,
Yes.
and it's called "The Stories You Should Know." Right?
Yes, that's right.
Please tell all our listeners and us also more about your podcast.
So I love storytelling. Okay, I am in a business of storytelling itself. The Bollywood is storytelling, right? And but the kind of content I'm producing with stories you should know is completely different. I am talking to women from all over the world and from different places. Like recently, I recorded a podcast with someone in Texas, and I'm doing it people in different parts of India. So it's about
Wow,
this.
you've gone full international.
I am planning to, like, I want to interact with as many people as possible because it's very important to put out some very interesting and inspiring stories out there of women who have been doing great in their life. There's so much they have been through, and I just want to talk to them and bring out their stories so that people can hear and people can correlate. It's been a beautiful one and a half month. I started it very recently. I think tomorrow or day after or sometime I'm gonna put out my eighth or ninth episode. So this has been really enriching experience for me. The kind of stories I have heard and the response I have got from everyone, it's unbelievable. I didn't even know that people actually want to hear to another person's story in such a way. So that was an idea behind it, to just reach out, listen to some stories and bring out those stories to the world.
So, Tarushi, where can all the listeners and everybody find your podcast and how can they
The
connect with you?
the podcast is available on almost all the platforms. It's on Spotify, it's on Anchor, it's on Google Podcasts, it's on Apple. I have also started the Instagram page, so if you want to follow, it's called Stories You Should Know.
Superb. So, we'll also leave the links to the podcast and the Instagram page and everything in the description so that everybody can check it out. And with that, let's move to our next segment, which we like to call it as almost news. So, technically, all the news from around the world that has
Nice.
not made the headlines or could not be on TV.
Almost news. Yes.
Yeah, so just, almost news. Yeah.
The almost news, which I was very excited and I'm very surprised it did not make headlines, was that Indian Military Academy on 12th June launched its first passing out parade that was broadcast live, because of the
Yes.
ongoing pandemic. The
Yes.
parents and friends could not reach out and attend the ceremony personally. So it was telecast live. I watched it. It was so beautiful to see all those officers, launch themselves as officers and the look on their faces. There was this guy who was a fourth generation officer. So it was a happy moment, a very touchy moment amidst all that's happening
That's
around the
such a
world.
beautiful thing, no? Like, that's the beauty of digital media and internet. like you can connect with anybody from anywhere. You can
Yeah,
reach out to so
and if
many
you,
people at one
I
time.
mean, the pictures itself of the ceremony was so beautiful. The cadets and everyone and the officers. I mean, people were wearing masks and doing social distancing, and you can
Yeah.
see. I mean, we are always proud of the marches that happened. It was beautiful.
Next we have, because it's a Pride Month going on, so I'm very happy that, because there's been a while since I felt, oh, article, it's homosexuality is legal now, but nothing is, we're not actually witnessing a lot of people coming out. So amidst all of this, Vikas Gupta, who is a very famous Big Boss contestant, he's done with years of hiding emotions, and finally he came out as a bisexual. So it's a good
Right.
step forward, I believe.
So Vikas Gupta is the same person on who was on Big Boss, right?
That's right.
Yeah, he was a very famous Big Boss contestant. He's got a
And he
lot of
was, I
contacts.
think,
A lot of people know
he
him
was associated
apparently.
with MTV before that,
I don't know much
if I'm
about
not
it.
wrong.
I'm
I
so
think he was on
sorry.
MTV. Yeah, I think it was a VJ or on MTV also. And yeah, it's pretty good. Like if people are coming about it and they are finally being vocal about it, I think
Yeah.
that is something that we need from a lot of people. And I think ऐसे ही will, like as a society, will become more accepting also to,
Hmm.
these kind of thing and these kind of topics, because एक इतना ऐसा सोशल स्टिग्मा है, बिकॉज कोई बात ही नहीं करता है इस चीजों के बारे में. Nobody comes
Yeah.
out and raises a
You
voice for
know,
that.
this is exactly the same thing. I recently recorded one podcast with Sonal Jiani, and that was in celebration of Pride Month. And she
Right.
identified herself as a bisexual. And she says that she has been advocating LGBTQ rights since 10 years now. And the main problem in our country is no one wants to talk about it. That
Hmm.
is the problem. It's not like people hate it, it's like people just don't want to talk about it.
Exactly. And with that, we'll move to our final segment, where we will take recommendations from Tarushi for this week.
So, see, I recently watched Arya because I'm a big Sushmita Sen fan. So you should definitely watch it. Like, I love that woman. If you really want her comeback and you want to watch it that way. And other than that, I really like the series Dark on Netflix, and the season finale is gonna happen on 27th now. That's a very
Got it.
nice series, and I'm also watching Sharp Objects, that's there on Hotstar. Very nice content that is. So I think these are a
So
couple of.
Arya is also on Hotstar.
Yes, Arya is also on Hotstar. Sharp Objects is on Hotstar. And if you want to watch something very light-hearted, go for Panchayat. That's on
Oh,
Amazon
that's a
Prime, I
wonderful
guess.
show.
It's a
Yeah.
beautiful show. Very light-hearted, very nice, soothing. You'll
A
feel
very
like
cute actor.
very, very nicely done. So that's one there.
If you like the episode, don't forget to follow us wherever you are listening. You can also leave us a high rating on Apple Podcasts, as it helps other people to discover us. We will see you very soon in another episode. So till then, take care and keep smiling.